Hi, I'm rickdior, and today we're going to work on drags, cheeses, and ruffs. So these are three grace notes that are really important in modern drumming. Now, the previous video that I did for you was on flams, and these are kind of an extension of those flams. So a drag is two notes instead of one. So when you had the flam, you had one note. So that's a grace note, one note soft, and the next note is louder. Now you have two notes that are soft, and the last note is loud. So flams and drags. Now there's many drag rudiments, and we're going to go over those now for you. I already did those in my Rudiments video, but if you haven't watched that in a while, we'll just go through these quickly here. So the first one is just the regular drag, where you're doing this. The next one is the single drag, where you're doing a tap after the drag. Then we have the double drag tap, and that's this. And then we have lesson 25, which is this. And that can start with either hand. Here's the other sticking, starting with the right. Now, sometimes you'll see that written like this, but it's the same rudiment. Next, we have Paradiddles. That's with the drag right on the beat. And next, we have the drag Paradiddle, which is normally in a 6/8 feel. Next, we have the drag Paradiddle, number 2. So this has two drags involved. And next, we have the Ratamacue, starting with the single Ratamacue, which is a drag and a triplet. And then we have the double Ratamacue, which is two drags and a triplet, mostly or normally in 6/8. And finally, we have the triple Ratamacue, which is three drags and a triplet. Now, if you want to see these slower, please take a look at my Rudiments video that I did probably 3 or 4 months ago. All right, good. So let's talk about different styles of drags. In classical music, we have closed drags. So in other words, you can play the drag crushed, like a buzz. So there it serves as an elongation of the note. So it's kind of just a little bit of character there. You can also play those open. But normally I'll play them kind of on the closed side, so it's not perceived as late by the conductor all the way in front of the orchestra. Now, when you play rudimental music, the drags are normally pretty open. So almost triplet based. But again, they're very quiet. They shouldn't be as loud as the primary notes. Now, a good example of this can be found in the works of Wilcoxon and Pratt. So these are famous rudimental solos that use lots of drags. Let's take one from the Wilcoxon book. This is called Roughing the Single Drag. And first we'll do it up to tempo, which is 120, and we'll do it straight. So by straight, I mean, based on the 16th note. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, so that's march-like. Now, if you want to do it with some character, you can slow it down a little. Let's say 116, and we could put the metronome on 2 and 4, and we could swing it. So by swinging it, we're going towards the triplet. This is what that sounds like. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you see it's much more relaxed, much more kind of grooving. So if you listen to any of the older jazz drummers, like Philly Joe Jones, Max Roach, Jimmy Cobb, Elvin Jones, you'll hear a lot of these kinds of drags being played in that manner. If you hear them trade 4s or 8s or play an elongated solo, this is the language of that style. So it's completely different than playing it straight and march-like. So there you see the drags are much more wide open, almost triplet based, but they're still very, very quiet. Okay, so kind of funky. So that's what you want to go for that. Now, in my 3 Camps book, for those of you who have it, there's several exercises, and I'll post them online or up on the screen so you can see them. And let's go over some of those, because these are exercises I've written for students over the years that deal with particular problems with drags, and they're all really difficult. So none of these are going to be easy, but let's go over a few. So on page 39, the first one on that page, number 8, that one deals with drags written out as 30-second notes, which is common. And then there's some accented notes around it. So without the metronome playing it slow, it looks like this. So when it's fast, and that's especially tricky with the left hand. With the metronome, maybe like 110 is a good tempo. 1, 2, 1, 2. And the next one, number 9, is even harder. So let's try that same tempo. 1, 2, 1, 2. That's very tricky with the left hand especially. So those two are really great for getting some coordination and strength with your left hand. And those are drags in there, so they can be written in a different way. Now, if you skip ahead to page 41, page 43, on the bottom of that page, number 36, that's a Ratamacue exercise. So again, it's pretty long here, so you want to start slow and learn it first. We'll try it for you here at, let's say we do it at 90, which is on the slower side. Now when you go back and you repeat, you leave that first drag out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a lot of notes there, okay? And then tempos you might want to strive for, maybe from 110 to 114. I'll try it at 114. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so another really good one to play. Now, also in this Three Camps book, there's a lot of drag exercises. So if you remember the Three Camps pattern, which was this, and so on. I've done that in a lot of these videos. Basically, I just took these rudiments and put them in that accent pattern. So if we start out on page 8, drag Paradiddles, you'll see that it's written in that accent pattern. So there's a lot of redundancy built into these exercises, very repetitive, which is the best way to improve your technique. So these can be done at several different tempos. A slow tempo for this one would be around 80, and this is based on the triplet since it's in 12/8. So let's play a little of this for you. I won't go through the whole thing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so on. And when it's a little faster, maybe a 96 is a good tempo. I think so. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you just keep going. So these are great. And you see when it gets faster, it sounds a little bit different than it's written. But always remember to play those drags really quietly. And you see the height I'm getting on my accents. Now the next one is extremely tricky. Page 9. These are double drag Paradiddles. So a good fast tempo for this is 105. And that's the half note. So quarter note would equal 210. We'll take that triplet off and put on the eighth note. Or I should say the quarter note. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a short one, but again, tricky with those accents. All right, and then once again, you see how soft I'm playing those drags. Now, if you go to page 11, you'll see those dragadiddles that we talked about earlier. So we'll just do a little bit of that so you can see how we do that. Now, again, there's a heavy accent on the drag. So here, you can play that a little higher, like that. So put on the 16th here. 1, 2, 3, 4. and so on. All right, so you see there that's a little different because there's an accent on the drag. Now let's jump over to page 26 and we'll get into some of these single drags. Now these single drags are written a little different than that drag tap. These are basically syncopated, and you can play these straight as 16ths or triplets. So that's important. You need to practice them both ways. So if we go to 124 and we play them straight, this is pretty quick, but if you listen, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if we played those as triplets, it'd sound like this. All right, so that's a different feel, and a lot of these you can do that. So that's much faster. That's around, 150 or so. I left out the repeat on purpose there. All right, but you see how that swings. That's very jazz-like. So they can be played in two different ways. Now, page 27 is the same way. So you can play it straight or more tripletized. And being that it's in 12/8, it's kind of tripletized already. Now, in this case, we'd go down much slower to, let's say, 86 and put on the triplet. So it sounds like this. So again, very jazz-like. It's important that you play these things phrased correctly and they're not stiff. Otherwise, you can't use them musically. The whole idea is to be able to use all these things in a musical context. And you can't if you're playing like a robot. So you see my body language, you see how relaxed I am, you see how they're kind of funky. That's what you want. Good. So let's just move on here. Page 29 are Flam Drags. We went over these when we did our Flam video. You might want to watch that, but I'll play quickly just a little of that. And that's how those go. All right. And now lesson 25, that's a really useful one also for playing jazz. And here I wrote it in that alternate sticking that I talked about when we played our rudiments through. So that sounds like this. Actually, we'll put on the metronome for this one. Let's do this at 124. That's normally a good tempo. And we'll put it on, we won't subdivide this because we're going to play it a little triplety. So 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, now if I was going to play that straight like this, it'd sound different. So I hope you hear the difference. It's much tighter, all right? Not necessarily I'm playing tight, but the whole idea is the notes are tighter. So you need to be able to phrase with your technique. That's why you work on your technique. So you can phrase, so you can do different things. So if you hear something, you can emulate it, copy it. All right? That's so important. And that's why we work on these stickings. That's why we work on these rudiments. That's what gives our playing magic and character. And that's what makes everything sound good. And that's what makes one person sound maybe better than the next person because they're playing with lots of inflection and musicality. Good. Hope you understand that. All right. I think that's it for the... Oh, actually, you know what? Let's do one more thing. These are really tricky. Let's do Ratamakes. So at the end of this section on all the 3 camps exercises, there's pages 35 and 36, which are the hardest ones for endurance. And these are Ratamacue. And these can be done at many tempos. I suggest starting them slow first. A good tempo, moderate tempo, is quarter note equals 100 for the one on page 35, Ratamacue number 1. So let's play a little of that for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, when we play this faster, it takes on a whole nother character. So if we said like 122, which is pretty quick, let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see how that sounds so different once you speed it up? And again, I'm playing a little bit on the jazz side, a little bit swinging, not tight, nice and loose. And finally, on page 36, you have this epic Ratamacue number 2, which is a combination of all the Ratamacue together. So a good tempo to start with here would be dotted quarter equals 70. And again, you want to subdivide the triplet here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and there's a turnaround there that gets you back on the right sticking at the end of the first ending. Now, if we go to a faster tempo, 82, it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And goes back onto the second camp then. So very tricky and kind of the ultimate technical exercise there. And take your time, go slow. I'm playing them fast because I've been playing these for years and years and years. And you can hear me play them even faster than that if it gets you excited. If you go to the 3 camps playlist and look at those when I was young and quicker. All right? But again, speed is not the thing. The thing is control and phrasing. All right. And like I told you with the Flam exercises, try to play all these quietly as well. So you shouldn't just have like 2 dynamics loud and louder. You should have a range of dynamics from pianissimo, which is 2 Ps, all the way up to fortissimo, 2 Fs for these. So play them softly. And I'm playing on a pad today because I've been drumming so much. And I'm kind of tired of using earplugs, and I want to be able to hear the metronome. So this is a drum mute. This is an old one. Sabian makes them now. So these are great. Always practice on something with a real head. That's what I suggest to everybody because this mimics the feel of a snare drum very, very closely. So now we're going to talk about ruffs. Now ruffs are strokes that are more than two that come before a note. In other words, a flam is one note, a drag is two notes, and a ruff is three or more notes. So you can have a four-stroke ruff, a five-stroke ruff, etc. Now the four-stroke ruff sounds like this. You need to be able to stick that from right to left and then left to right. Most people never learn that backward sticking, which is hard to start with the weak hand. In my case, it's my left hand. You need to learn that because there's lots of times when you're going to have to do that, especially if you play in an orchestra or concert music. So you just have to sneak it in. Now you can do those single stroke. And again, it's not a triplet. It's faster than a triplet. So because they're grace notes and they need to be softer than the primary note. The primary note is the last note. So a triplet would sound like this, and a four-stroke ruff sounds like this. Now the way I play those is I squeeze them and I use my fingers. That's a five-stroke ruff. All right, so it's difficult. You have to use a lot of fingers. And it needs to be relaxed. Don't use your shoulders or your arms, just wrists and fingers. And you can get a good result by just letting things drop. That does take a bit of coordination. Now you can also use these as crushed singles. So that's with this sticking. I'm going to talk about another sticking in a minute. So if you look at my Three Camps book, page 39, exercise number 15, you'll see an exercise there with crushed singles, which are really four-stroke ruffs. So if we put the metronome on quarter notes at 100 and get rid of that triplet, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a difficult exercise, but again, if you squeeze that, you can do it. Now, these are great on drum set, especially if you play big band. It's just kind of a typical stock fill to go bam, you know, and you get a lot of strength on those with your fingers and the toms, so they sound great with minimum effort. So that's something I definitely recommend working on a lot. Now let's give you some alternate stickings. One I like to use in the orchestra is right, left, left, right. So when that's faster, so when you play it soft, let's show you on the snare drum. Now there's no muffling on here, but normally, let's put a little on there. I'd muffle it just a little. So you see how those work. For me, that's a lot easier than playing singles. And if I'm a little nervous or my hands are a bit shaky, which happens to everyone, then that's a really reliable sticking that I use. So I like using those in the orchestra. So again, right, left, left, right. Another sticking might be doubles, like left, left, right, right, or right, right, left, left. That's left, left, right, right. And you can reverse that and go right, right, left, left. All right, so, you know, that's fine to do that. So I experiment with lots of stickings all the time. You might find one that works well for you, and then, you know, do that. There's no sticking law that you have to play these a certain way. Now, in the Three Camps book, there is an exercise that's really difficult that I would suggest working on with all of these stickings. And that's on page 33. And you can do this at quarter note equals 100. I won't play through the whole thing, but if you want to hear the whole thing, again, go to the Three Camps playlist and go on the Three Camps in 4-stroke ruffs. So these ruffs need to be closed. So we'll do with single stroke ruffs, and let's play this for you. Put on a little bit of 16th notes. 1, 2, 1, 2. And so on. All right. So that's a really, really good one. Use all the stickings that are written. And that's just fantastic for playing, learning how to play these ruffs quickly and in time. Now, the only other thing I should mention that when we have more than a 4-stroke ruff, you can do those doubles. And I might suggest doing that. So a 5-stroke ruff would sound like this. If we put the metronome on. So what that is a really, really fast 5-stroke roll. Not 32nd notes, faster. Almost 64th notes. So where a 5-stroke roll might be, this is. Now, a lot of times when you see these written in orchestral music, they're meant to be played closed, like. There's a lot of differences in the way the composers write things in percussion music, and that's one of them. So instead of playing those open, you can play them closed. It's up to you. A lot of times I'll play them open, and if the conductor doesn't say anything, I just like the way that sounds. So I'll go ahead and do that. And that goes with, if you can have longer ruffs, you can have 7-stroke. And you see how those are squeezed. Again, those are doubles. It's important to play them quietly. Most cases, you're going to be playing these things softly in an orchestral setting. Again, for drum set, not necessarily. All right, so that's it for the ruffs. And we're going to do a little section on cheeses. So let me get that set up, and we'll be right back. Now let's talk about cheeses. So I know it's a weird name, but a cheese is a flam and a drag combined. So if you just took a flam, and then at the end of that flam, in other words, the primary note, that would do a drag. So again, the height, the motion is the same. I really like this rudiment. It's a hybrid rudiment because it's very funky and it's open. And I actually was using these on drum set for years and years before it became a standard hybrid rudiment. So it's something that lots and lots of drummers use. A lot of rock drummers would do it. So, you know, you'd hear that sound. So the idea of these things is to bounce them. So. And you can do rudiments with them. A good one to practice is flam accents. And I like to do them as open as possible. You can do them more closed. but that's a little too drum corps for me. I like them kind of funky. And they sound great if you're playing Latin fills. That kind of stuff. All right, so there's an exercise in my book that's good for this. Page 43. This one's in 7. If you put it on eighth notes, it sounds like this. So eighth note equals 180. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And there I'm playing them extremely open. So again, I like to do that. You can play them more closed if you want. Also, in the 3 camps, there's a few of those. Page 12 has them in cheese paradiddles. So it's basically a flam paradiddle, but a cheese in front. Good tempo for this is, these all need to be a little slower, especially if you're playing them open like I do. So 102 is good. And we'll put that on 16ths. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that all the way through. And again, check that out on my 3 camps playlist. We're kind of running out of time today. This is turning into a really long video. The only other one that I recommend in this book that you work on is page 25. And these are cheese triplets. So flam accents with basically cheeses in front of them. And a good tempo for these is 120. Put this on triplets. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. All right, and then we go on from there. And again, take a look at those from my 3 camps videos. There'll be a 2 tempo, slow, and then really fast, double time, basically. You don't have to play these that open. I just use them that way on drum set, so I practice them that way. You can play them closed. If you're going to play with other people, like in a marching band or drum corps, you're going to have to play them that way because it'd be impossible to get, 10 snare drummers to play those that open together. So they're going to play those very close. All right, good. So I hope this video helps you. This is the last one with all these grace notes that we're going to do. So we've covered flams, drags, ruffs, and cheeses. The next video we're going to do is on short rolls, which is very important. I already did the rolls closed and doubles, but short rolls are extremely common, again, especially on drum set. So we need to go over that quite a bit. So just look for that in the coming weeks. Thanks.